What is an easy complete quilt block? It's a block made up of an insert, a back, and then the back lining. And the back lining we use is fleece. The back lining is cut smaller than the back that it lines, but the profile and size of the piece where the back meets the lining are identical, so that makes lining this very easy. If you watch any of our videos, you'll already understand this idea. This is a sample of a completed Easy Complete Quilt project we call Marquee because it resembles a marquee diamond cut. Notice how the back is flipped to the front to form these sashes. All of the hexagons in this project are roughly identical size. Anything that isn't identical is due to human error, not because it was intended that way. The thing you have to realize is the information you need to figure out is how big of an insert you want visible. In other words, how long is the line from beveled edge to beveled edge? The width of the sashes is predetermined by the number marked on the Easy Complete Quilt template. In this case, it's a 5/8 of an inch wide sash. That's never going to vary regardless of how much of the insert you want visible. Here are the tools required to build an Easy Complete Quilt pattern using a template for a hexagon with a 5/8 of an inch sash size. You're going to need the template. You're going to need a marking device. I like to use the heat erasable marking devices. That way, if it leaves any residue on my template, it won't accidentally transfer to fabric later on. And you're going to need a measuring device like a ruler with either centimeters or inches marked on it, whatever you prefer. You're also going to need a roll of paper or very large paper. I'm using tabloid sheets of paper. They're 11 by 17, but any large sheet of paper or paper taped together will work for this process. When you begin, you're going to have to put one hexagon on each sheet of paper that's identical in size. So I mark this one, and this is fine. I don't even have to join these lines, but on the other sheet of paper, I did join the lines. That's optional. What happens if you don't have a nice hexagon drawing template? That's not a problem. What you have to do is you have to measure this line right here. This line happens to be 3 inches long. So I'm going to draw a line anywhere on my sheet of paper, and I'm going to use my Easy Complete Quilt template to help me make a hexagon. I'm just going to cross mark it there, and then I'm going to make sure and put a mark 3 inches from that cross mark. The Easy Complete Quilt template has 3 dots here, the lowest dot in this group of dots, and on the other side. If those are joined together, they form the correct angle to make a hexagon piece. So I'm going to use those to draft a hexagon of the correct size. I lay the first dot anywhere along this line it needs to be. This dot is positioned on the second mark that I made on the line. Next, install this one dot. Now I'm just going to draw a line joining the hash mark through my dot, maybe even drawing it a little longer than it needs to be, and I'm going to put another hash mark at the 3-inch area. And I'm going to repeat that process. This dot goes at the hash mark, and this dot has to be drawn to indicate my angle. And this way I can get an accurate hexagon shape to draft my patterns. So this becomes the insert, And normally, if I need to run a grain line, I'll run it now. And if the design is one way, I'll only put an arrow on one part of the grain line. And all I'm going to do is add somewhere between 1/2 and 5/8 of an inch to this piece. 5/8 of an inch might be just a little too much. And the new line I'm drawing will become my cutting line for this pattern piece. This is my insert pattern piece. The only thing that'll be visible when the quilt is completed is everything falling in this area. All of this is going to be tucked underneath the sashes. Now that the insert's drawn, I'm going to draw the back. And I want to mark my grain line on that as well, and I want to make sure it's going the same way as the insert. So what I'm going to do is draw a line from this intersection to that intersection, and that becomes a grain line. Okay, when you use an Easy Complete quilt template, there are 2 ways to position it on your drawings. The first way to position it are so that these 5 dots are on the exterior of the hexagon as you're building your pattern. So what you're going to do is you're going to position this line with the dots in it onto each one of the intersecting lines forming the outside of the hexagon, and you're going to trace along the top edge. These all happen to meet. If there were gaps, I would use a ruler to join the lines to one another. This then becomes your new cutting line for the back piece of each hexagon quilt block. After I've drafted my back piece, it's time to draft the lining piece. Unlike the back piece where these 5 dots were on the exterior, I'm going to flip this piece over and the 5 dots will be on the interior. But there's also a new line to follow, and the new line is the line running right here with no breaks in it. And it just sits right on those angles again, that line, and then you draw around the outside, but only along the straight edges. Don't go down these sides, they're not useful right now. These little channels are for use with a rotary cutter. Say you want to draw hexagons directly on the fabric and you want to use the template to cut the fabric, you can use a rotary cutter to do that. I didn't put my grain line on this, but I will now. And I'm going to label this piece lining. I'm going to cut them out and you can see how they compare. Once the pattern pieces are drafted and cut out, you'll have a lining, a back, and an insert, and they'll enable you to build an easy complete quilt like the hexagons in the movie.